The Neymar you fell in love with is never coming back. But with the 2026 World Cup just around the corner, will he get his one last dance? To answer this, we'll look at his ridiculous rise to fame, his decision to leave the greatest attack in football, and assess his heartbreaks every single time he looks set to achieve his destiny. Neymar's early career was like something we'd never seen before. The level of fame and level of hype surrounding this teenager was outrageous. You see, it all starts with Neymar's father, who was actually a professional footballer, but he never reached that top level, so he ensured his son wouldn't suffer the same fate. Neymar actually started playing futsal rather than football, and this is what got him that close quarters control which enabled him to stand out from an early age. At the age of just 11, he joined the Santos Academy. If you know anything about Brazilian football, you know they are the club of Pelé, who at the time was the undisputed king of Brazil. He was the only man in history to ever lift 3 World Cup trophies, and he did it starting at 17 years old. So the pressure for any Brazilian kid is massive. But for Neymar, the pressure dial was turned up to max. The reason was simple. Because he was the level above anything anyone had seen coming from Brazil before. At just 14 years old, he travelled to Spain with Real Madrid, where they actually offered him a deal to join their academy. But again, it was his father who knew best. He had made the calculated gamble that his son wasn't mentally ready to be uprooted to a different country. Plus, Santos made the decision slightly easier by offering the equivalent of $500,000 for him to stay in Brazil. Just imagine how outrageous that actually is. $500,000 for a 14-year-old prospect. From that moment onward, the hype had transformed into a full-blown national obsession. Every move Neymar would make was televised. Every haircut he had was copied by millions. In fact, his haircut became so popular that it actually got banned in Brazilian schools. You've got to understand, he hadn't even played a professional game of football yet, and he was the most famous teenager in the country and already the Prince of Brazil. At 17 years old, he did make his professional debut. In his first full season, he scored 14 goals in 48 games. But it was 2010 where he really exploded. For context, you need to understand where Santos were as a club at the time. In the seasons before Neymar started playing, they were really struggling. They had finished as low as 15th in the league. And if you thought that might hold Neymar back, you would be wrong. He scored 42 goals in 60 games across all competitions, leading them to win the Campeonato Paulista, which they actually won for the next 3 years in a row. It wasn't just that Neymar was scoring and assisting. He was embarrassing defenders with rainbow flicks and skills people hadn't seen before. Keep in mind, we're still talking about an 18-year-old. In 2011, he led the club to the biggest prize in South American football, the Copa Libertadores, the first title they had won since 1963. And it doesn't take a genius at home to work out who was the star in 1963. Of course, Pelé. Right from the start, the similarities between the two were more than apparent. By 2012, Neymar was already scoring his 100th professional goal. But that year, he went from being a future star to just being unstoppable. Across 66 games for club and country, he put up a staggering 56 goals and 30 assists. He was averaging well over a goal or an assist a game, but it wasn't just about the statistics. It was the weight he carried for Brazil. That summer, off the back of an outstanding season, he would be competing for his first international competition for Brazil. It wasn't the World Cup. They had won that before. It was a prize Brazil had never won. Believe it or not, they'd never got a gold medal at the Olympic Games for football. And this is where it started, because Brazil did end up making the final, but they fell short to Mexico. Uribe Peralta was actually the man that got 2 goals and won Mexico the competition. And Neymar was devastated. If nothing else, it shows that his passion for Brazil came before everything else. And unfortunately, this disappointment with the national team would be a trend to follow him. For now, he was finishing his time at Santos with an incredible 136 goals, 225 games, winning every major trophy Brazil had to offer. But now, Europe was calling for one of the biggest transfer sagas of the entire decade. Essentially, every major club in Europe wanted Neymar, but the saga pretty quickly came down to just two: Barcelona or Real Madrid. Florentino Perez, the chairman of Real Madrid, was desperate to sign Neymar. Apparently he offered him a blank check and said fill it in with what you like. So on paper, the Madrid deal was a certainty because it offered Neymar more money, it offered Santos more money, but there was one problem. Neymar had his heart set on Barcelona. He had grew up watching his idol, Ronaldinho, turn the Camp Nou into a theatre of magic. And of course, there's this quote from Neymar: "I don't know if I'll ever reach his level, but I know I want to play alongside him." Who's that about? Of course, Lionel Messi. Now, that's the positive side of the move. The negative side is a bit more secretive, because while Barcelona originally claimed to pay 57 million euros, the truth was actually something a bit different. It later emerged that the total cost was closer to 86 million euros, with 40 million euros of that going directly to Neymar's father. The transfer saga ended up being so controversial that actually led to the resignation of Barcelona's president. The legal battles would rumble on for many years, but at this point it didn't matter. Neymar was a Barcelona player. In his heart, he knew he'd never be the king of Barcelona. He was joining to be the apprentice to the greatest player in the world. There was a small adjustment period when Neymar in his first season only got 15 goals and 15 assists, but it wasn't just the adjustment year. There was a weight much greater. A home World Cup in 2014 was coming. You see, nothing meant more to Neymar than winning the World Cup. So imagine winning it in your home country. Then imagine this was your first World Cup ever. The pressure on his shoulders was just ridiculous. So would it surprise you that he delivered an absolute masterclass in the group stages? He scored twice against Croatia, twice against Cameroon, equaling a record set by Pelé himself of scoring 4 goals in the first 3 World Cup games. The red carpet was well and truly rolled out. This was the time for the Prince to become the King of Brazil. And then tragedy hit. A brutal knee in the back in the quarterfinals against Colombia. Neymar was airlifted to hospital crying in pain while a devastated Brazil squad had to try and move on. They did qualify to the semi-finals, but at what cost? Their star man, their leader, was in a hospital bed. And then you had one of the most memorable results in World Cup history. Germany 7, Brazil 1. It was an absolute mauling, a mauling in front of their home fans. Many were left in tears. For international football, it really doesn't get much worse. So for now, it was time to focus on club football. The summer of 2014 was of course brutal for Neymar. But there was a small, shining light back in Barcelona because they had just signed a Uruguayan striker who goes by the name of Luis Suarez. In the 2014-15 season, Neymar scored 39 goals across all competitions. He became the first player to score in both legs of the Champions League quarter-final, semi-final and the final itself. Barcelona won the treble and Neymar finished as joint top scorer in the Champions League with who else but Ronaldo and Messi. It was clear that Messi, Suarez, Neymar, or for short, MSN, were the deadliest strike force in football. In the 2015-16 season, it was Neymar's time to step up again because Messi was injured for 2 months. And again, he took that step up in his stride. He proved he could lead the best team in the world on his own. He finished that season with an outrageous 31 goals, 25 assists in 49 games. But there was something far more important for Neymar, because while he was conquering Europe domestically, his national team life was a roller coaster of chaos. After being named captain of Brazil at 22 years old, the pressure finally boiled over in the 2015 Copa America. In a heated match, it was once again against Colombia where it all started to fall apart. Neymar lost his cool, headbutting an opponent, earning him a 4-match ban that ended his tournament in disgrace. The pressure, the critics, they were ruthless. In the remainder of the competition, Brazil ended up with an embarrassing loss to Paraguay, and Neymar was left still without a Copa America and facing major criticism for his failings at the Olympic Games, the World Cup, and now the Copa America. Keep in mind, this is while he was absolutely unstoppable for Barcelona and was winning everything. However, 2016 was Neymar's year of redemption and arguably peak Neymar. But first, let's cover Copa America, because there was one in 2015 and in 2016. And for Brazil, a humiliating defeat in the group stages. So how is this a redemption story? Well, in the summer of 2016, I've actually already mentioned it, Barcelona made him make a choice. The Olympics or the Copa America. You can't play in both. Neymar led Brazil to the only football trophy they'd never won. Gold in the Olympic football. There is one key fact I haven't mentioned about that Olympic Games. It was in Rio, in front of his home fans. So not only did he make up for his failures 4 years ago in the London Olympics, he also made up for some of his failures 2 years prior at the World Cup in front of his home fans. But it's important to remember, his destiny wasn't to win the Olympic Games. It was to bring a World Cup to Brazil, or at minimum a Copa America. Across the 2016-17 season, Neymar was at his absolute creative peak. He finished that campaign with 20 goals and 26 assists in just 45 games, but the entire season boiled down to one night. The 8th of March 2017. Barcelona had been humiliated by PSG in the first leg of the round of 16 Champions League match. No team in history had ever come back from that scoreline. But Neymar came out with a famous quote, "As long as there is a 1% chance, we have 99% faith." With just 7 minutes to go until full time, Barcelona still needed 3 goals to qualify. And that's where Neymar turned it up a notch, because in the 88th minute, Neymar curled a perfect free kick into the top corner. In the 91st minute, he stepped up to bury a high pressure penalty. And in the very last second of the game, in the 95th minute, he dinked a legendary through ball into the feet of Sergio Roberto to slide home for the winner. Concluding one of the greatest comebacks in football history, where Neymar was the architect. That year, Barcelona set a club record of 116 goals in La Liga alone. To put that in perspective, they were averaging over 3 goals every single game. And this time, internationally, he was just as dominant, leading Brazil on an 8-game win streak in the 2018 World Cup qualifiers and famously dismantling Argentina 3-0, where he scored his 50th international goal and made Brazil history to be the first nation to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. Then, in August 2017, the unthinkable happened. PSG triggered his release clause of 222 million euros. Neymar did the unthinkable. He moved from Barcelona, where they had the greatest attack in footballing history. They were winning everything. But he wanted the personal accolades. He wanted to win the Ballon d'Or. He wanted to step outside of Messi's shadow. But it would come with devastating consequences. You see, at first, Neymar was an absolute joke. He was far too good for the league. In his first 20 games, he scored 19 goals and got 13 assists. It was perfect. He was peaking just as the World Cup was coming up. Then, in February 2018, he suffered a fractured metatarsal that nearly ended his season. They rushed him to recover for the 2018 World Cup in Russia, but he wasn't the same player. It was clear Neymar wasn't at the peak of his powers. He was getting more criticism for his diving and his theatrics rather than his on-field performance. Despite being the more dominant team, Brazil crashed out to Belgium's golden generation in the quarterfinals. Once again, when it mattered most for Brazil, Neymar had come up short. And things didn't really improve for Neymar. He was still absolutely ridiculous, still playing such a high standard of football. He led PSG to a Champions League final, their first ever. But again, he came up short in the final, a 1-0 loss to Bayern Munich, as he can be seen crying from the bench. It was like he could climb the mountain, but just as he got to the summit, he would always slip down. When he had the best player in the world alongside him, it was fine. But without him, he was struggling to get over that final step. And it only compounded in 2021 in the Copa America again, as Brazil at home reached a final to play who else but Lionel Messi's Argentina, where neither Neymar or Messi had won internationally with their teams. And as you may know, it was Argentina who came out 1-0 champions. You see, there's an argument to be had that Neymar just isn't meant to win with Brazil. Every time he gets so close, and yet fate just stops him, whether through injury, whether through his own mistakes, whether it's the pressure. Every single time there's heartbreak with Brazil. Even in 2022, as we roll into the Qatar World Cup, this was arguably his best chance yet. Brazil had so much depth in their squad, and 80 minutes in to the very first game, it happened again. A heavy tackle on Neymar left him with a severely swollen ankle and a damaged ligament. It looked like the 2014 World Cup again, where he would miss the rest of the tournament. But Neymar knew this was his best chance to achieve his destiny. He worked with physiotherapists 24 hours a day to try and get back fit. And in the round of 16 against South Korea, he returned. For a moment, the magic was, is he on a run for the World Cup? But he is one goal away from Pele's Brazil record. What better way to take the throne of Brazilian football than to come back with a World Cup and be the all-time Brazilian top scorer? In the quarterfinals, Brazil played Croatia, and for 90 minutes they were in a stalemate at 0-0. And then, in the 105th minute, the planets were aligning. Neymar scores, equaling Pele's record and on the verge of sending Brazil to the semi-final, where they would go on to play Lionel Messi's Argentina for the perfect redemption story for the 2021 Copa America final. But Croatia had other plans. In the 118th minute, they level it, and as it goes to penalties, Brazil are knocked out before Neymar even gets to step up to the spot. For some, this meant more than an elimination. This could be the end of one of the greatest careers in football. You see, the best days of Neymar were behind him. He was moving into the twilight of his career and made the move to Saudi. He still had a chance at the Copa America in 2024, but again, something stood in his way. Neymar had torn his ACL at 31 years old with a plethora of injuries. An ACL tear can be the end of a career. However, there is a chance for one last dance, the 2026 World Cup. But there's a huge obstacle standing in his way. Like most of his career, it's injuries that might stop him. You see, Neymar moved back to his boyhood club Santos, where he helped them with 5 goals in the 5 last games avoid relegation. But after that, he needed surgery on his knee. But there is a shimmering light of hope, because Neymar, as of today, is back in full-time training. Now, whether he has enough fitness to actually get back to full fitness is going to be the key, because the new Brazil manager doesn't take any nonsense. Carlo Ancelotti is there to bring Brazil success, not Neymar success. He said he can be considered if he's at 100%, but if he's not at 100%, he won't be considered. The first hurdle for Neymar comes in March 2026, where Brazil have some high-profile friendlies against France and Croatia. If he's not able to get into the squad for those games, then it looks less likely that he'll make the World Cup squad. If he can make it into that World Cup squad, then he has the likes of Rodrigo, Vinicius Jr., João Pedro, Cunha, Rafinha, all alongside him to help him achieve that destiny. It's not like World Cups of the past, where if Neymar wasn't 100% fit, Brazil wasn't 100% fit. We all know, even if he just gets 20 minutes off the bench, that can be the difference between winning and losing games for Brazil. But as we've seen in history, that doesn't always matter. Sometimes it just always seems to go against Neymar. But let me know in the comments, do you think he will get his one last dance? If you enjoyed this, please drop a like and check out my videos on Hazard and Johan Cruyff.